Wow, it is wonderful being here at St. A's today. What a welcome. Thank you so much. Now, you haven't been counting like I've been counting, but this is our 100th town hall since I announced in June. So it's good to be here at St. A's for number 100. And I want you to know that I brought someone with me who I don't think you've met yet here in New Hampshire. This is going to be the next Vice President of the United States, Paul Ryan.
Hey, everybody. Great to be back at St. A's. Good to see you. Wow. Look at this. Father, how are you? Good to see you. The great thing about a row of priests, you can say, Father, how are you? And they all say hi back. It's great. I was here with the Sununu's a couple of years ago, and I served in Congress with some very capable, conscientious legislatures. Thank you for sending us Frank Ginta to Congress. He's an awesome guy. What about Charlie Bass? That is a man who knows fiscal responsibility, who's fought with us. And your rock star Senator Kelly Ayotte, yeah, you are the best. Great to see you, Kelly. You know, it's nice to see some family. My cousin Francie lives in Portsmouth. My cousin Mary lives over in Boston, so it's great to see some family here today. Friends, we got a big decision to make. This is no ordinary time. It's no ordinary election. And the choice is basically this. We can stay on the same path we are on, a nation in debt, a nation in doubt, a nation in decline, or we can elect real leaders like Mitt Romney and get this country back on the right track. The problem we've been having in Washington is that too many politicians, like President Obama, just wait, I'm about to make a point. Too many politicians like President Obama have been more worried about their next election than they've been worrying about the next generation. That's not leadership. That's politics. We won't do that. We will lead. We want to earn your support. We want to deserve this victory. So that when we do this, we have the moral authority and the mandate to fix this country's problems, to reacquaint ourselves with the American idea and get people back to work. Now, let's be very clear and fair. The president inherited a difficult situation. No two ways about that. Problem is, he made things worse. And that's why the president has run out of ideas. And so, his campaign has now been relegated to waging a campaign based on frustration and anger, dividing people, distracting people, to try and win an election by default. Of all times, when we need leadership, it is now. It is such an amazing moment in history because I have rarely seen a moment where the man and the moment meet so well like Mitt Romney does at this moment in our history. When you think of the challenges we confront, you need a leader. When you look at this man and his life, the example, it spells leadership. Remember the Olympics back in the late 90s? All those stories at Salt Lake about the wasteful spending and the bloated spending and the corruption. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Who did they call? They called this man, Mitt Romney. And he went to Salt Lake, thought what he was doing. He saved the Olympics and he made our country proud. Look at what he's done in business. For me, I think it's a good thing that we have a leader who actually knows how to create jobs. His success in business is the American dream. It's the American success story. It's the thing we want to see happen to our own children. He took small businesses and grew them. He took struggling businesses and turned them around. An 80% success rate. That's astounding. I am proud to stand next to a man who created jobs, tens of thousands of which made more prosperity and more opportunity for working Americans. And I'm proud to stand with a man who, from experience, knows that if you have a small business, you did build that. That's what drives our economy. That's what gives us prosperity. We should be proud of that. It's who we are. When we see people work hard, take risks, achieve success, we take pride in that. We don't resent that. It's as if the president's speaking to people like they're stuck in their current station in life, and only the government's here to help them cope with it. Wrong. We believe in prosperity and opportunity and upward mobility. Those are the things we want to see. Take a look at the record, which is such a clear contrast between the record of Mitt Romney as a leader of the governor of Massachusetts and President Obama. Remember when the president said when he came in office he would create jobs. Unemployment would never get above 8%. It's been above 8% for 42 months running. 23 million Americans. Back at you. 23 million Americans are struggling to find work. Nearly 1 out of 6 Americans are in poverty today. That's unacceptable. Now, look at the record of this man. The credit rating was upgraded when he was governor of Massachusetts. The credit rating was downgraded under President Obama's failed leadership as president. Unemployment went down. Unemployment went down in Massachusetts. And household income, over the past 4 years, family income has dropped by more than $4,000 under President Obama's failed leadership. When this man was governor of Massachusetts, family income went up by more than $5,000. Real results with real leadership. When he was governor of Massachusetts, he worked with people across the aisle. Look, we all come from states where you have to work with the other party to get things done. President Obama came in and said, we're not red states, we're not blue states, we're just the United States. We're going to put aside childish things. This is the third president I have served with, and I have never seen such bitter partisan rhetoric like the kind we have today. When Mitt Romney was governor, he reached across the aisle, he got things done, and he balanced the budget without raising taxes. Now, we've heard a little bit about Medicare lately from the president. We want this debate, we need this debate, and we are going to win this debate about Medicare. You know, like you, when I think about Medicare, it's not just a program with numbers and words. It's personal security that has been there for my family when we need it. You know, I had my mom, Betty, down with me in the Villages in Florida on Saturday. She's been on Medicare for over 10 years. When my grandma moved in with my mom and me, and we were her caregivers when she was suffering Alzheimer's, Medicare was there when our family needed it then. It's there for my mom when she needs it now. And what President Obama will not tell you is that his signature achievement, Obamacare, raised $716 billion from Medicare to pay for Obamacare. What's more, he puts this new board of 15 unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats that he's about to appoint who are required to cut Medicare every year in ways which will clearly lead to denied care for current seniors. His campaign calls this an achievement. Do you think raiding Medicare to pay for Obamacare and putting bureaucrats in charge of cutting it is an achievement? I don't think so either. Next time you get your paycheck, look at the line about payroll taxes. We pay our payroll taxes for two programs, Social Security and Medicare. That's the law. That's how it's supposed to work. But now, because of President Obama, it's being siphoned off to partially fund Obamacare as well. That's not an achievement. That's a raid on Medicare. And Mitt Romney and I are going to stop that raid of Medicare. We're going to restore this program, and we're going to get these bureaucrats out of the way of standing between our senior citizens and their Medicare. Medicare should not be a piggy bank for Obamacare. It should be a guaranteed promise that our seniors can count on. And in order to save this program for those who are already retired and people who are about to retire, you have to reform it for my generation. Because, by the way, it won't be there for us when we retire. The good news is there are bipartisan solutions to this problem. It originated in the Clinton Commission in the late 90s. The Bipartisan Commission to Save Medicare. It has bipartisan support in Congress today. For younger Americans, when they become Medicare eligible, let them have a choice of guaranteed coverage options, including traditional Medicare, that they can select from, just like I do as a member of Congress, just like Kelly and Charlie and all the rest of us. We choose. I think the future to saving Medicare is to let 50 million seniors decide how they get their health care instead of relegating that decision to 15 unelected bureaucrats. That's the American way to save these programs so that we can guarantee the promise of Medicare for today's seniors. Now, I won't go into all the things that we're proposing to do to get jobs back because I want to leave something for Mitt to talk about. The point is, we're offering you solutions. The president has a failed record. He clearly can't talk about that. He didn't change tune. He tacked far to the left. But it's not just that we have to talk about. Our solutions. How to get people back to work. How to have more jobs, higher take-home pay. The Romney-Ryan plan for a stronger middle class is aimed at doing just that.
Thank you.
Now, it really comes down to this. Are we going to stick with the path we are on, or are we going to get this economy growing again? My dad said a lot of things that really stuck with me since I was a kid. He would always say, son, you are either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. He usually was saying that to me when I was part of the problem. Right, Francie? Today, sadly, President Obama is part of the problem, and Mitt Romney is the solution. It's just that clear. That's what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get this back. We're going to turn this economy around. We're going to be truthful to our founding principles. We will not blame others. We will take responsibility. We will not duck the tough issues or kick the can down the road. We will get things done. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to elect leadership at the 11th hour. Cue the bells. You know what? That reminds me of one of my favorite figures in history. I'm a big fan of Winston Churchill, and I have a bust of Winston Churchill in my office. Churchill said, "The Americans can be counted upon to do the right thing, but only after they've exhausted all the other possibilities." I think that's kind of where we are right now. The good news is it's not too late. We can get people back to work. We can get people out of poverty. we can reignite prosperity, we can save Medicare, and we can do this by electing leadership. And the man who is going to lead this comeback for America is the man standing next to me. His name is Mitt Romney, and he is going to be the next President of the United States of America.
Thank you, Paul. Oh, what a treat to be here. Thank you. What an honor. Thank you so much. Paul, you're terrific. Thank you. And to Frank and Charlie, Kelly, what a team here. And only a Catholic guy would be able to get the bells to toll just at the right time at St. Anselm's. You know that? Father, you did that for him. I know. Oh, my goodness. So many friends here in New Hampshire. Gosh, I feel like I'm almost a New Hampshire resident. I come here and I would save me some tax dollars, I think. But it's great to be here with you. You've been here for me on the day that I announced. You've been with me time and time again at town meetings like this, and you voted for me when it counted most, and got me the nomination in a lot of respects, and I owe a great deal to the people of New Hampshire and appreciate your willingness to be here with me today. Thank you so much. It is delightful to have a guy, part of my team, who has character and integrity, who has the capacity to take on tough issues, who's willing to take on tough issues and not just kick the ball down the field and hope someone else will deal with America's challenges. I appreciate a man of courage, integrity, and strength, as Paul Ryan is. I appreciate the fact that he's learned how to work with people on the other side of the aisle. As you may appreciate, having served as governor of Massachusetts, you either did that or you perished, and because my legislature was 87% Democrat. And oh, they were okay. That's all right. Anybody here from Massachusetts? Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. I always comment there's a border security problem here, all right? Thanks for letting me across the border this morning. This is a guy who's been able to work with good Democrats, find people that could look beyond partisanship, find common ground to get things done. And that's what we need to have happen. And I'm planning on going to Washington with Paul Ryan, and we're going to get this country back on track for the American people. I'm asked from time to time, why are you doing this, Mitt? Why'd you get into this? And you know the reason. You've heard me say this before. But you see, I want to make sure that everybody in America who wants a job could get a good job. I want to make sure that everybody who's thinking about retirement or in retirement knows they have a secure retirement. I want people to know that if they get ill, they're going to be able to get treated. They're going to have health care that's affordable. And I want every mom and dad to know that their child will get the best education in the world. These things we have to provide to Americans across the country. And I know what it takes to get those things done. I've had the experience of working in the real world, if you will, the private sector, and seeing how enterprises get started and how they change the lives of people when they're successful, and how, by the way, sometimes they're not successful, and how we lose jobs. I understand those things. I want to bring that understanding to make sure we can create good jobs for every American that wants a good job. We've got to do that. And so I have a deep desire to make a difference for the people of America, of the middle class, of all classes that we love so deeply. This is a great land, and we owe our people a bright and prosperous future, and that's what Paul Ryan and I will do with every ounce of our energy. That's what we'll bring to the American people. Now, I've seen something about what it takes, and one of the fun things of this campaign over the last year and some odd months has been to get to know the people of America and see just how we tick, and how New Hampshire ticks as well. I was at the Madison Lumber Yard. I don't know whether you know Madison, New Hampshire, and there are a couple of guys there, Jim Smith, Ken Moore. International Paper owned the lumber mill there, and they decided that lumber was not part of their future, so they were going to close it down. And these two guys went to the bank and got some investors and loans, and they bought the lumber mill rather, from International Paper, and they keep it in business, and they employ a lot of people there. And I respect the entrepreneurship, the innovativeness of individuals who step in, who take a risk, who make things happen. I met a young woman. I was in High Point, North Carolina, just a few days ago, and her name is Melanie McNamara. She's in the furniture making business, and I'll tell you, the Chinese have just killed one job after another in furniture manufacture for a lot of unfair reasons. But putting that aside, she figured she was going to lose her business and the jobs of the people that worked for her unless she could find some way to keep in business. And she had this idea. She's going to make furniture of a very specific nature. Furniture that goes in the waiting rooms of hospitals. That's her niche. And she does that well. The 27 people who work for her are happy to have a job because she figured out how she could compete with the Chinese and win. And we're going to do that all over the country. I met a guy in Southern Illinois. Jim Leotoad is his name. And Jim graduated second in his class in high school. Second from the bottom, that is. And he decided that college was not in his future. And so he went to his dad and said, "Dad, can I borrow some money? I want to start a little business." And he and his dad worked something out. His dad would own half the business, he'd own half, and they were going to serve food. And he went out to buy one of these hamburger griddles, you know, and then the rollers that make hot dogs, and then you need this big hood to take out the smoke and all that. By the time he costed it all out, he found out he didn't begin to have enough money to buy all that stuff. So, as a matter of fact, the conclusion was all he could really do was make sandwiches. So he got some tables and went to a friend's garage and made sandwiches and then delivered them to people's homes. That was his idea. Good sandwiches, delivered at work. Now Jimmy John's has 1,500 restaurants and employs 60,000 people. Isn't that amazing? It's just, you see, it's just the way America works. It's individuals in their own ways pursuing their own dreams, who take a risk in some cases, who work harder than they ever imagined they would, who use all their brain power to come up with ideas like, okay, we're going to make hospital furniture, or we're going to find a way to make this lumberyard work, even though this big company that owns it can't make it work profitably. And we're going to start this little restaurant, and it's going to grow and go all over the country. This is the way America works. I understand that. The founders understood that. You see, when they decided what America would look like, they had some extraordinary, I'll call them inspirational thoughts. One was this: that our rights did not come from government, our rights came from the Creator. And among our rights were life and liberty. And by the way, that includes religious liberty. We respect the right of religions to practice in a free and tolerant way. And number three, the pursuit of happiness. Americans would be free to pursue happiness as they choose. You see, the founders recognized that far more effective in guiding an economy than having bureaucrats try and tell people what to make and how to make it and where to sell it and how much to charge for it. Instead of that, we let free people decide what they want to do, each person going off in their own way, building enterprises like making sandwiches or hospital furniture or cutting lumber. And this would create, as you know, the most powerful economy in the history of the world. You see, America's economy is driven by freedom. Freedom is what makes America work. And the president, the president said something, and Paul alluded to it just a moment ago, but the president said something extraordinarily revealing about himself and about how he thinks about the economy. You could see where he was coming from with what he did. You know, with the stimulus dollars, do you know how much money he invested in so-called green energy companies? $90 billion. $90 billion. I guess he likes to pick winners and losers. In his case, losers. And those businesses, he thinks in some respects that he and his people, by picking businesses, can do a better job than free people, consumers, making the choice of what's better for them. And it hasn't worked. It's the wrong approach. And what he said underscored his philosophy. He said this, and you heard it. He said, if you have a business, you didn't build it, someone else did that. And he said, look, man, you're taking me out of context. That's not really what I meant. So by the way, go on YouTube and look at the context, all right? The context is worse than the quote, all right? Because he says, you know, if you're successful, you think it's because you're smart, but there are a lot of smart people. And if you're successful, you may think it's because you work hard, but there are a lot of people who work hard. And I wondered, where's he going with this? Is there something wrong with being smart and working hard? You see, in America, we value people who are smart, who work hard, who take risks, who build things for themselves and for others. And we recognize we're in this together, and we help one another, and Americans coming together, by the way, out of many, one, us coming together and uniting, that creates a stronger nation. But nonetheless, we recognize and celebrate the success of each individual, and we acknowledge their success. We don't denigrate it. We don't divide Americans based upon their level of success. We come together. The other day, you know, I thought about a kid that works hard to get the honor roll, and she works real hard. I know that to get the honor roll, she had to go on a school bus to get to school. But when she makes the honor roll, I credit the kid, not the bus driver. And so, as opposed to having a president who thinks that government creates our economy and allows it to grow, I understanding that it's free people and freedom that drive our economy, I'm going to do 5 things. When I'm in Washington with Paul Ryan, 5 things we're going to do. They're going to get this economy jump-started again. Number 1, we're going to take advantage of our energy resources, our coal, our oil, our gas, our renewables, even nuclear. Number 1, energy. We got a lot of energy. Low-cost natural gas is going to bring manufacturing jobs back. And by the way, keep our utility bills down. Number 2, I'm going to make sure that our schools are second to none. We need our kids to have the skills to succeed. That's number 2. Number 3, I want trade that works for America. That means we're going to open up new markets for our goods in Latin America and other places, and we're going to crack down on cheaters like China when they play on an unfair basis. Number 4, for people in this audience to take a risk to start a business, or to invest with a friend that's got a good idea, or some big corporation overseas that's thinking about building a factory, maybe in the United States or maybe somewhere else, for them to put money and put it at risk in America, they have to know we're not on the road to Greece. And so we're going to have to do something and do it soon, and that is show America that this team can put America on track to a balanced budget and stop the deficit spending. And there's one more. There's one more. And that's this. I want to champion small business. I want to make it easier for entrepreneurs and innovators. I want the small businesses you work in to find it easier to hold on to capital so they can grow their enterprise. The president wants to raise taxes on small business. I want them lower. I want to make sure that regulators and regulations are designed to make sure we encourage small business. And by the way, I want to take off that big cloud that's hanging over a lot of small businesses. And that is, I want to make sure that we get Obamacare out of the way and replace it with something which will help encourage job growth in this country. You know how important this is. You know what a difference this will make for America. For the 23 million Americans out of work, for the 1 out of 6 out of poverty, we need these things to help those folks. We also need to do these things to help the coming generation. And one more thing. American strength is critical not just for us in this country, but also for the world. I was fortunate enough to be in Poland a couple of weeks ago and have the chance to meet with Lech Walesa, a world hero. And I had just met with Prime Minister Tusk, and so I came in, and Lech Walesa looked at me and he said, "You must be tired. You just came from overseas." He said, "Sit down. I talk, you listen." So I did. And he spoke for about 15 minutes, and he kept on hammering me with the same point. We need American leadership. Where is American leadership? Look at the challenges in the world. Look what's happening in the Middle East. Look at what's happening around the world. We need America to lead. Let me tell you, if this man is your vice president and I'm your president, we will do everything in our power to keep America strong, to lead in the world with strong values, strong homes, strong principles. We'll lead with a strong economy, get this economy going again so people have good jobs, and so that we can make sure we have a military that's second to none in the world. It's essential America is strong. That's my commitment to you. We're going to get America back. We're going to make sure it remains strong. And my request of you is that you also make a commitment. I'd like you to find one person who voted for Barack Obama who you can convince to vote for Paul Ryan and me, all right? Now, you each know someone who voted for Barack Obama. And I know there are a lot of them out there that aren't quite sure what they're going to do. So you guys, I want you to meet with them. I want you to talk to them. I want you to tell them that we're going to help get good jobs. We're going to make sure we restore, strengthen our homes and schools. We're going to get America's economy so strong that we can afford a military that protects liberty for ourselves and preserves peace on the planet. And I'll bet if you do that job, we can make sure we win not just in November, but here in New Hampshire. New Hampshire, make the difference. Help this man and I become the next president. And Vice President, with your help, we're going to get America back. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now it's your turn. Now it's your turn here. We're going to take some questions, and small audience back here, please. You can, just shout it out. I'm not sure you need a microphone, but if, yeah.
Our national debt, politicians often talk about ending the national deficit, but that's not really the real problem. It's our national debt. And I'm wondering what you can say that will help us know that you will help end the national debt, not just the deficit, but the actual debt itself.
Well, as you know, we have about $16 trillion of debt, which is about the size of the total economy. And passing on this debt to our kids. Oh, and by the way, not just the debt, but also unfunded promises to coming generations and to our generation. That's about another $62 trillion on top of that. We're passing these burdens on every year. The folks at USA Today calculate the amount of debt and unfunded promise per household. It's over $500,000 per household. You don't know you're carrying and will carry, and the interest on that. And most likely, my generation will be gone before all that interest and debt is paid off. These are burdens for things we've purchased during my lifetime that are going to get paid for by our kids. In my view, it's not just bad economics, it's immoral for us to pass these burdens on to coming generations. So what do? Well, first you've got to end the deficit and then start accumulating, if you will, reserves and growing. That's what we did. Well, most states figure out how to do this. They balance their budget. And in my state, I came in, we had about a $3 billion budget gap. We balance the budget. Then we began building a rainy day fund. It was over $2 billion when I left. That's how you do it. So what do we do here? I have three things I do. To one, get rid of the deficit. And then let me tell you how we're also going to go on to start pulling down the debt. Three approaches. Number one, we're going to get rid of programs we don't need. My test is this. I look at every program and say, is this so critical as a program it's worth borrowing money from China to pay for it? And on that basis, we're going to get rid of some programs like Obamacare and some others. Number two, we're going to take a lot of programs and send them back to the states where they can be run more efficiently and with less fraud and abuse. And number three, we're going to skinny down the size of the federal workforce that remains with attrition to make sure it's more productive. Now, how do you actually get to a balanced budget and start paying off the debt? And the answer is there are three mathematical ways you could do that. One, you could raise taxes. Not going to do that. That's a mathematical way. Two, you could cut spending. I'm going to do that. But number three, and most important, you can grow the economy. All right? And so when Democrats say, oh, just raise taxes, what they don't understand is that raising taxes slows down growth. And it's like a dog chasing its tail. You're never going to get to the balanced budget by raising taxes. You have to encourage growth. That's why our policies are focused on, one, bringing down spending, and two, encouraging growth. That's why we champion small business. That's why we champion our energy resources. We want to grow this economy and cut federal spending. You do those two things, we get to a balanced budget, and ultimately, we get rid of this debt. Thank you so much. Thanks, Paul. No, this guy... That's it. I want to hear what he has to say on this topic. I mean, he's been working on this for the last 14 years.
I can't really top that. That is the magic secret. Pro-growth economics to get people back to work. Going from collecting an unemployment check to creating and building businesses to having a paycheck. That brings in more revenues through economic growth. Cut spending, reform government programs so that they are paid for. The problem is we've had decades of politicians from both political parties making lots of empty promises to voters to get reelected. And what will happen if we have a debt crisis is those empty promises become broken promises with painful consequences unless we act. Turn on your TV when you get home. Look at Europe. That's what happened. They made all these empty promises. They got a debt crisis. Now they're in recession. Now they're slashing health and retirement benefits for current seniors, raising taxes, slowing down the economy. Young people don't have jobs. We need to prevent and preempt that, and that's what this is designed to do. Get people back to work, cut spending, reform government, prevent us from being Europe, and then we'll be the port in the storm in the global economy. America will be the place you want to create jobs. You want to have your company. This is the engine of economic growth we've had before. We can turn it around, and if we do that, then we'll get our debt under control and get it paid off, and our kids and our grandkids will have a debt-free nation, just like our parents. They took on the challenges in their generation. We do that, and we revive the American idea and the American legacy.
Governor Romney, Congressman, we haven't had a budget at the federal level for 3 years, and there's the absence of a blueprint for our nation. There's an absence of a rapport with the constituents and with Congress, and that's the problem with our existing president. What are you two going to do when you're in the White House leading the nation to get a budget in place that will give confidence to the financial markets and give confidence to the business community and the world economy that you've just spoken about?
Sure. I'll take the second round. Yeah, thank you. Good question. Thank you. Paul?
We're going to follow the law. Go figure. We have a budget law. The budget law that governs how Congress taxes and spends your money, that law says that not only is April 15th tax day for all Americans, it's budget day for Congress, and the Congress is supposed to pass a budget every year by April 15th, but where Kelly works, because she's in the minority, the Senate has chosen to ignore this law for 3 years. We haven't had a budget for 3 years because the United States Senate hasn't passed a budget for 3 years. Yeah, you guys ever heard of a guy named Harry Reid? Okay, you have. I rest my case.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. But the point is, it takes leadership. President Obama has given us 4 budgets. Each and every one of these budgets duck the tough issues, kick the can, and have given us deficits that are over $1 trillion every single time, and no solution in sight. He punted leadership. The Senate hasn't led. We're still living under that Obama budget from 2009 that paved the way for Obamacare and everything else. So what we're going to do is follow the law, lead, introduce a budget that solves this problem. We need Kelly to have more help in the Senate, and courageous people like Frank Gitta, who served in the Budget Committee, who helped us do this. We're going to get courageous men and women back in Congress. We're going to lead, offer a budget, and fix this mess before it gets out of our control.
I'm just going to underscore one thing there, and that is, as the congressman indicated, there is the role of leadership. I hope you've experienced that in your homes, as moms and dads lead. You've seen it in the enterprise you may work. You've seen it in your state here. There are times when there's strong leadership and you're able to get things done. There are other times in an enterprise you're associated with where you haven't seen the kind of leadership you need. And the president the other day was speaking about some issues he hadn't tackled and Congress hadn't acted on. He said, well, they know where my office is. They know where the White House is. It's like, you got to be kidding. You're the president. You have to know where they are. Go meet with them. Go talk to them. I mean, I remember.
He doesn't do that.
He can't point at Harry Reid and say, oh, they can't get the job done there in the Senate. He's got to go over to the Senate. He's got to meet with them, talk to them. You remember Ronald Reagan sitting down with Tip O'Neill? More different guys I can't imagine. And yet there were important things in the country at that time. And there are important things today. And you have to have a president who, after getting elected, is willing to sit down with people across the aisle and lead America. This is that kind of time. We can't go on the way we're going on, or we'll end up being Greece. We cannot do that. If I'm there, I will fight and I will lead, and we'll have a budget, and it'll ultimately get us to a place where we can pay back debt.
Thank you, Governor. When my son's boss asked why he wanted the day off, he said, I get a chance to see Romney and Ryan. And he said, you mean that guy that wants to raise taxes. So what are you going to do to combat the lies the leftists are telling about you?
Yeah, thank you. It seems that the first victim of an Obama campaign is the truth. And it has been sad and disappointing. Frankly, you know, when I became the presumptive nominee, the president called me and congratulated me on becoming the presumptive nominee, and said that America deserves an honest debate about the future course of the country, and I agreed. I'm waiting to hear him begin that, because all we've heard so far is one attack after the other, and frankly, they're typically not honest. There may be one in there that is. I keep looking for it, but it's been a disappointment. And so, for instance, let me make this very clear. You know, I signed a statement. I will not raise taxes on anybody. I don't want to raise taxes on the American people. And this is a president who, by the way, has proposed raising the tax rate from 35% to 40%. And let me just point out, you realize the great majority of enterprises that we all work in, Americans work in across this country, are taxed as individuals. They pay that rate. They don't pay the corporate tax rate. They pay the personal tax rate. They're called flow-through companies. They pay individual taxes. When you raise taxes on small business from 35% to 40%, you will kill jobs. And then he put in place the Obamacare tax. It doesn't sound very big. Only 2.3% of revenues, not of profit, of revenues. So these businesses that are making medical devices and medical instruments, they have to pay taxes even if they're not making a profit. He's been raising taxes. He's proposing raising taxes. Let me tell you the heart of my tax proposal. I will not raise taxes on the American people. I will not raise taxes on middle-income Americans. We're going to make sure that Americans have the money to pay their bills. We're not going to raise taxes. That slows down growth. It kills jobs. We're going to get this economy going. And, Mr. President, stop saying something that's not the truth. Thank you.
I tell you. If you add up all these tax increases that President Obama is promising, it doesn't even pay for a fifth of his proposed deficit spending increases. If taxing, borrowing, and even more spending and more regulating were the secret to economic growth, we'd be entering a golden age along with Greece today. And as Mitt said, don't forget that 8 out of 10 of our businesses in America pay their taxes as individuals. Where I come from, overseas, where I come from means Lake Superior, the Canadians just lowered their tax rate on all their businesses to 15% last January. President Obama is promising that the tax rate on our successful small businesses, where most of our jobs come from, is going to go above 40% next January. You see, when we tax our job creators in America at much higher tax rates than our foreign competitors tax theirs, they win, we lose, and we don't create jobs. So he might be talking to people based on emotions of fear and envy and anxiety, speaking to people as if they're stuck in some station or class in life. That's not who we are in America. We believe in opportunity and upward mobility and prosperity, and we want people to succeed. We want businesses to grow. Because as businesses grow, as they can compete and they can thrive and survive, they give more people opportunities. Our communities come together. They don't fall apart. That is the secret to the American idea, and that's what we're going to acclaim and achieve when we get in charge and fix this mess in Washington.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you for being here in good old New Hampshire, home of the Red Sox. I have a very pressing question to ask. I've heard a lot of good things from you folks, and I agree with you 100%. And this isn't a curveball, but I have a grandson, my wife and I do, that's headed to Afghanistan in 45 days. I haven't heard much talk. Well, okay for them. But we have veterans, and I happen to be one of the Romney veterans here in New Hampshire for you guys, and I'm proud of it. But I want to know what you guys are going to do about Afghanistan. We got those characters over there shooting our guys, and our guys are coming home in body bags. So you guys take over Washington. What are you going to do about this damn mess in Afghanistan?
First, and you know I've said this to you before, thank you for your service personally. For our veterans and members of the armed forces, will you raise your hand and be recognized? Thank you. Thank you for your service. New Hampshire serves. New Hampshire serves America. Thank you. Thank you. Let me say a couple of things in response. One is, when our men and women are in harm's way, I expect the President of the United States to address the nation on a regular basis and explain what's happening and why they're there, what the mission is, what its purpose is, how we'll know when it's completed. Other presidents have done this. We haven't heard this president do this. This is something he ought to do time and time again so the people of America know where we stand. The idea that we're all here thinking about what's happening at home, I understand that. But we also ought to recognize that there are people overseas that are fighting for us, who are responding to the call of the Commander-in-Chief, and he ought to be reporting to their parents and their communities and the people of America. That's one thing I'll do. Number two, to send men and women into harm's way is quite a high hurdle. You don't just do that at the drop of a hat, or anytime you see something you don't like in the world, you don't say, okay, we're going to send in our troops. you recognize that to send in American troops would require a significant American interest at stake. That's number one. Number two, before you'd send them in, you'd have to understand and communicate to the American people what the mission is, what we want to accomplish, why we're there, and then how we would know when the mission was completed. And then you'd make sure that you provide for them all of the resources to protect them and to make sure they're successful in their mission. And then finally, you'd have to communicate to the American people what's going to happen after we go and how we're going to go. All these things have to be communicated. I wish we'd had that from the beginning and had it all the way along the line. I can tell you this, when I become Commander-in-Chief, if I'm so lucky, I will address the American people about these issues, and with regards to Afghanistan, I will do everything in my power to transition from our military to their military as soon as possible, bring our men and women home, and do so in a way consistent with our mission, which is to keep Afghanistan from being overrun by a new entity that would allow Afghanistan to be a launching point for terror again like it was on 9/11. Thank you, sir. Paul, please.
Sir, when you vote to send men and women to war, like Charlie and I did after 9/11, that's a vote you take very seriously, very solemnly. And when you give the military a specific mission, and the military tells you, here's what we need to complete this mission to keep our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines safe, you give them what they ask for. It's very important. I was in Helmand Province with the Marines in December, learning and listening to our Marines who are fighting there. And it is amazing. There is not an army that or troops that hold a candle to the American military. It is. And the point that Mitt was making that I think needs to be punctuated is the president, in my opinion, has made decisions that are more political in nature than military in nature. A drawdown occurring in the middle of a fighting season when we're still giving our military the same mission, we don't want to do something that would put them in jeopardy. We want them to fulfill the mission in the safest way possible. And that to me means you make decisions based on what's right for the country, for our national security, and let our men and women serving in our armed forces do their job in the safest possible way, period, end of story, elections notwithstanding. That's what leadership is all about, especially when you're sending men and women into harm's way.
Thank you. And Governor, I know Jean's son missed work. My son's missing the first day of school to be here for you today.
Yeah.
So
we're not going to clap for that.
I think one of the great disappointments of our current president is that he has done such damage to a lot of our relationships with our foreign allies, in particular with Israel. And I'd like to hear both of you address what you will do to rebuild that relationship and how you define what that relationship should even be.
Paul, I've been taking all these first, and it's not fair. So you take this one first, and I'll take the next one. Well, maybe I will or I won't. We'll see.
First off, Israel is our strongest ally in the Middle East. Let's treat them as if they're our strongest ally in the Middle East. When President Obama made the 1967 borders the precondition to the beginning of negotiations, it undercut our ally. It made it harder for the peace process to move forward, and as a result, we have no peace process. It is very vital and important that the signals we sent, that the leadership we provide, that we strengthen our relationship with our allies, that we improve this relationship which has deteriorated so much under this president, so that our allies in this region are negotiating from a position of strength and not being undercut by the United States of America when they're trying to arrive at peace. That is critical. We've both been there. We've traveled in this region. We've met with the leadership of Israel. And we have to recognize that perhaps the greatest threat in the world today is an Iran with nuclear capabilities, nuclear weapons capabilities. This is an existential threat to Israel, and it's a threat to our own national security. And we need to be firm in our resolve in preventing Iran from getting nuclear weapons capability and standing up for our allies in the region so that we do not have a nuclear arms race in the Middle East.
I agree. But let me add just a couple things. When the President of the United States speaks, he speaks to really four audiences. One, of course, is the American people. And that's, of course, the group that's important to him politically, to have their support, to help win their support for the coming elections and so forth. Number two, when he speaks, he's speaking to our allies around the world. And if they sense any weakness on the part of the American president in his commitment to our friends, they begin looking around to see where they can get support elsewhere to protect their own interests. He's also speaking in a way that's heard by our foes around the world, or those that are contrary to some of our interests. And if the president speaks in a way, again, that shows weakness, that emboldens them. And they decide to take action which furthers their interests and causes the retreat of our interests and the retreat of the interests of our friends around the world. And finally, when he speaks, he's heard loud and clear by our servicemen and women in the United States. And if I'm President of the United States, I will never say anything to earn support in that first group, the American public, that in any way harms our interests with regards to our friends and allies, that emboldens our enemies, or that in any way detracts from the commitment of our men and women in uniform. And like Paul, I would say that you have to treat your friends like friends. And if you have a disagreement, like you do now and then in your family, you hash that out in private. The president throwing Bibi Netanyahu under the bus was totally unacceptable. Him negotiating for Israel, our friend, totally unacceptable in my view. And with regards to Iran, I gave a speech, I don't know, 5 years ago now, at the Herzliya conference in Tel Aviv, and laid out 7 things I think had to be done in order to be able to keep Iran from pursuing their nuclear folly. And it has taken forever for any of those to begin to be done. We're now just getting around to tough sanctions on Iran. Should have been done ages ago. We should make it very clear that we're going to put in place crippling sanctions. And by the way, when Ahmadinejad said this last week about Israel, I won't even repeat it, the awful, offensive, obnoxious things he said about Israel should lead to him being indicted under the Genocide Convention, his people being treated like the pariah they are, his diplomats. And we should always make sure they recognize that to the United States of America, Iran becoming nuclear is unacceptable, and we have options on the table, but they're not just on the table, they're in our hand. We will not allow them to become a nuclear threat to us or our friends. Thank you. Guys.
Hi, my 15-year-old brother started his own company, and he made the bumper stickers for you guys.
I'll read it. Can you read it? You read it to us.
Obama's right. We do need change. Vote Mitt Romney 2012.
Her brother, the entrepreneur. Hi. Let's see. Can we run a microphone in there, one way or the other? There we go. Here comes a microphone. What does that say? New Hampshire, voter free or die.
First, I'd like to thank you both for coming to my wonderful campus, my beautiful campus. As a junior here, I'm lucky to say that I'm taking out my first loan, but I've been faced with the reality of how much debt I'm going to have after graduating here and then eventually law school. So my question to you is, what are you going to do to help the students of this campus, this state, and this wonderful country with their debt? And what are you going to do to help my generation become this country's future?
Absolutely. I'm glad you raised that, because there's some loans that have been taken out for you you don't know about. And I want that also to be on your list. Because every time you get a paycheck after you graduate, and if you're going to be an attorney, you're going to get your paycheck from the firm. You're going to see a line in there, which is money going to the federal government. Not just payroll taxes, but also income taxes. And that's going to be paying for the debts you didn't know you took on. And those come first, by the way. They come after you for that very first fun money you get. And it's a huge number. I just told you it's over $500,000 per household. You'll be paying the interest and the principal on that all of your life. So the first thing I'm going to do for you is make sure we don't keep on adding more and more and more debt that you don't even know about. That's number one. Number two, the next thing I'm going to do for you is make sure that when you graduate, you can get a job. Half the kids coming out of college this year, half can't find a job or a job that's consistent with a college degree. It's unacceptable. We have to make sure young people coming into the workforce can get a job. I think it was Dick Armey the other day who practiced a little humor. He said it used to be in America that the American dream was owning your own home. Now it's getting your kids out of the home you own. I want to make sure that you're able to get a home of your own, that you can have a good job, that you can start paying back the debt. Now, I know it's very tempting as a politician to go out and say, you know what, I'll just give you some money. I'll just take the government's just going to give you some money and pay back your loans for you. I'm not going to tell you something that's not the truth because, you know what, that's just taking money from your other pocket and giving it to the other pocket. I want to make sure that I'm not going to go out and promise all sorts of free stuff that I know you're going to end up paying for. What I want to do is give you a great job so you'll be able to pay it back yourself. And I want to get the government off your back so you can keep more of what you earn. Thanks so much.
Sure. I'll tell you one other thing. When President Obama talks about this issue, he makes all these promises. He shows us a budget where he's going to increase all these Pell Grants, then he cuts off the funding in 2 years. It's called a budget gimmick. Empty promises. We have to go at tuition inflation as well. Tuition inflation is it's much faster than other inflation. And so when we are spending on the right hand, we've got to make sure that it's not fueling more inflation on the left hand. So we've got to make sure that your education dollars stretch farther than they have in the past. And there are things we need to do to get it more transparency so that educators, institutions like this great school of Catholic higher education. I went to Catholic school for 8 years. It's a great education. We want them to compete for your business as a student based on quality, based on outcome, based on affordability. We want that kind of competition works everywhere. My first time in this state was a high school kid skiing Tuckerman's Ravine with my brother, that is a great workout, I'll tell you that. It's pretty windy up there. But when I grew up, education inflation wasn't quite what it is today. It is double-digit in some cases. So we need to attack the root cause of education inflation. That combined with economic growth, that combined with giving you a debt-free nation, is how in this generation we maintain the American legacy of leaving the next generation better off.
Now, this goes against my nature. This goes against my nature,
oh, yeah.
All right.
Jeez.
All right.
Line two.
This better be a good question for a Yankee fan. I don't know. I have to tell you a story. I was at the Citadel in South Carolina giving a speech, and all of the cadets were all lined up and sitting as if at attention, if you will. And now and then in my speech, I'd tell a joke or two, and they kind of looked down the aisle. The guy would shake his head. No one would laugh. All right, no laugh. I couldn't get any laugh out of them. And finally, I took questions from the audience, and most of the people had written out their questions on a note card, and they read the question, and I'd respond to it. One guy stood up and said, Governor Romney, what do you think about the Red Sox having traded Johnny Damon to the Yankees? And everybody was just astounded that someone asked a question that hadn't been prepared. They all turned around to see which cadet it was, but it was a great opportunity. I said to them, it proves one thing. We all hate Yankees.
But not you, sir. We love you.
Yeah. Okay. Please.
I back winners. That's why I'm backing you.
Thank you.
Isn't it time to audit the Federal Reserve?
Yeah, the answer is yes to that. Very plain and simply, the answer is yes. The Federal Reserve should be accountable. We should see what they're doing. Look, I'd like to take a close look at a lot of things that are happening in government as well. I'd like to take a very close look at what this president's doing with his budget, where he's spending his money. I think people would find it very interesting to see how much money has gone into all these companies that are owned by campaign contributors of his. It stinks to high heaven, and I think it's a travesty, and I'm happy to and would like to see the Fed audited. I don't want to have Congress run the Fed, by the way. I want to keep it independent. There are very few groups that I would not want to give the keys to. One of them is Congress. I don't want to give Congress the keys. But I want to say this. I'm told that you all have to go to work. That was about a few hours ago. Some have to go to school. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your help today, for your willingness to come out and spend some time with Paul and me. I want to thank you for your love and passion for America. I know you're not here just because I'm your best buddy or Paul is or just diehard Republicans. You're concerned about the country. You're concerned about America. This country we love is facing some real challenges. And this is a critical time for us. We're going to decide what kind of America we're going to be. We're going to decide something about the soul of America, what it means to be an American. I'm an American that believes in freedom. I believe in opportunity. I believe people who came here over the centuries were looking for an America where their child would have a better future than even the experience they've had. And right now, the majority of Americans don't believe that anymore. I do believe it. I believe if we get off the track that President Obama's put us on, you're going to see America's economy come roaring back. I think you're going to see brighter days in America. I'm convinced that our kids will have a bright and promising future. And I want to ask you this. Get out of work. Find one of those Obama voters and get them to support our team. We're going to do everything in our power. We're going to get this country back. America is going to remain the hope of the earth and the shining city on a hill. Thank you so much. Paul,
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Let's get it done, everybody. Thank you very much.